Hello, welcome to Eurosport's Formula 3000 coverage. We're now at the Nurburgring for round 6 of this 12-race championship. Supporting the Grand Prix of Europe, the German circuit, of course, so often the subject of changeable weather. But this weekend, it looks as though it will remain dry. Well, set in the hills by the Schloss Nurburg, this is some 40 kilometers from the German city of Koblenz, and of course it is one of the most historic racetracks. And here's another racing driver who's trying to take over my job.
Hi, my name is Tomáš Enge. I come from Czech Republic driving the Formula 3000. I welcome you to the 6th round of the Formula 3000 Championship in Nurburgring. This circuit is good for me. I like it. It's under the castle of Nuremberg, and this circuit is very difficult for weather conditions. We never know if it's going to be dry or wet. The weather changes here so quickly. This circuit is quite difficult, I can say. You have a few fast corners, few slow corners, one slow chicane. And it is very difficult to get one really clear 100% lap to be as fast as possible.
So Tomáš Enge introducing you to the circuit at the Nurburgring. Despite sitting out the first practice this morning with hydraulic problems on his Ferrari, Michael Schumacher claimed a dominant pole position for Sunday's Grand Prix of Europe at the Nürburgring, dipping below the 1:15 mark for the first time. Younger brother Ralph starts alongside, while Pablo Montoya underlining the potential of the Williams-BMW combination with a fine third position. McLaren duo David Coulthard and Mika Häkkinen line up almost 3/4 of a second behind on row 3. Jaguar's Eddie Irvine will start 12th, while Jenson Button lines up on the outside of row 10, 1.3 seconds slower than teammate Giancarlo Fisichella. Best two Michelin-tired cars, of course, the Williams drivers in 2nd and 3rd, Eddie Irvine in 12th place, the next best of the Michelin runners. Well, temperatures, 18 degrees air temperature and 28 degrees on track for Formula 1 qualifying. And in the final moments, David Coulthard's car eliminating Michael Schumacher's final run as he lost it coming out of the final corner, brought the car back under control but seemed to stall in the runoff area out of the final turn, just as the checkered flag had come out, meaning that Schumacher headed right to the pits instead of finishing his final lap, but still claimed pole.
And now we're going to have a quick show from last race, which was not so good for me. I did a little crash in the qualifying, but I ended up 7th in the race, and it was my first finish in Monaco since last 3 years. I tried to qualify into the race.
Monaco then, the jewel in the crown of Formula 1 racing, and the Formula 3000 race saw Mark Webber starting from pole ahead of Justin Wilson and Darren Manning. Wilson and Manning 2nd and 3rd into the first corner, but Darren got into the tail of Justin. Justin slid a little wide, lucky not to be spun across the front of the field. Darren Manning in 2nd place without a nose wing. That was stuck under the back of Justin Wilson's car. Further back, collisions on the way down to the station hairpin, as was the Lowe's hairpin, and a big blockage in the track. Well, David Saelens was the man who initially slid out wide there, but that little imbroglio happening further down the hill. So all to do again for Mark Webber. Justin Wilson in 2nd place, Sébastien Bourdais in 4th, with Stéphane Sarrazin standing in at the Prost Junior team, holding down a strong 3rd place. Well, this was David Saelens trying to pass Giorgio Pantano in the swimming pool complex and slightly misjudging it. Antônio Pizzonia crashed out, losing it in the fast left-hander out of the swimming pool. Well, Pizzonia, one of many to taste the tarmac and concrete barriers, the iron and concrete barriers rather, during the weekend. Darren Manning, another. The Team Arden Russia driver was going very strongly until that accident. coming out past the statue of the first ever winner of the Monaco Grand Prix, Williams. The safety car picking the field up and then releasing them a couple of laps later. Once more, Webber leading Wilson away. Sarrazin in third place, but some shocking restarting further down the order. Well, Webber driving away from Wilson, as he'd been able to do twice from the first start and the first restart. And Justin just didn't have the pace in the Nordic car. An all-French battle for third place. Stéphane Sarrazin and Sébastien Bourdais driving for Prost and Dams respectively. But it's very tricky indeed to pass at Monaco, and in the end Sarrazin held on for third place. Webber the winner.
It's great, very special, because in Formula 1 a lot of great drivers have won here. Prost, Senna and Schumacher won many races, and I'm really happy to, okay, it's only 3,000, but it was very good to conquer this circuit. And for 1 hour to drive around, it's easy to destroy your car. Like, I didn't qualify, but I'm really happy.
So despite that practice crash, Webber on form and winning here at Monaco. Justin Wilson, another strong finish in second place.
It would have been nice to challenge Mark for the win, but I was, after the first corner, I was happy to be still in the race. So it's a little bit disappointing, but you know, the team has done a great job. The cars work great, and you know, just pleased to make it to the podium.
And of course to continue as the championship leader. Justin Wilson, his advantage over Mark Webber a little reduced, but still leading on points as they get to the Nurburgring. There is the final result. Riccardo Sperafico fifth, ahead of Riccardo Maurizio, and Thomas Enge just out of the points despite battling all the way through the race to get back in. So Enge failed to score. Webber jumped from 10 to 20 points, doubling his score. He's only scored in the 2 races so far this year, though.
And now, don't walk away. We take a commercial break, and after that's gonna be news from paddock.
Thank you, Thomas. He's a rather better TV presenter than I am a race car driver, damn him. So we'll be back in the Nürburgring in just a few moments. We'll bring you up to date with the latest news from the 3000 paddock. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Nürburgring, and welcome to the Prost Junior Team Formula 3000 garage, where changes are all afoot. Stéphane Sarrazin replaced Nicola Filiberti for the Monaco race, but it's now 25-year-old Jonathan Cochet, the reigning French Formula 3 champion, who takes over that seat. Jonathan saying, got a phone call from John Walton, one of the Prost Grand Prix managers, and he offered me a drive in the 3000 at Nürburgring. Of course, I've accepted. It's a great opportunity to have my first race in this category. Well, this is not the first time he's driven. He tested for Supernova, but couldn't tie up a deal at the beginning of the season. He says, role of a test driver, which he is for Prost, is also to help the team out when there's a problem. Gabriele Ferrani couldn't do the rest of the season, so they've asked for some help from their test drivers. Stéphane Sarrazin at Monaco, but he didn't want to continue in 3000, so the team have asked me, and I've been delighted to accept. Well, Cochet could yet run at Monaco and through the rest of the season, but it seems that nothing has been confirmed. Well, you don't drive these cars the same as a Formula 3 machine, he said. They're more brutal, you're a bit more basic, you have to be very less delicate with it. You can't really change the setup the same way, so it's the driver has to adapt to the car and not the other way round. Well, his new teammate this weekend is 20-year-old Zsolt Baumgartner, the Hungarian driver, also a Formula 3 runner. He races in Germany, and he's hoping to continue both programs.
I get a test possibility with Prost afterwards, and they was very satisfied. Mr. Delestre was very satisfied, and after the test I had the possibility to sign this contract, and I was very happy.
Well, he tested with the team at Lucy Lervis, and Dominic Delestre happy to take him on.
I was very afraid from the car, but after I had the test with the car, I was really sure that it will be, for me, not a big problem to step from the F3 car to the 3000, and I think the backwards will be also not bad, because I will do also the F3 races in Germany as the whole year.
His sponsor, the Hungarian national oil company, MOL, making sure that their man gets a leg up as quickly as possible. Well, in the Supernova pits, Australian Mark Webber tested the Benetton Formula 1 car during the 4-week break since Monaco, and he says it's always a little bit difficult to readapt to Formula 3000 once you've been flying around in an F1 car.
To get into this car and to be on the limit, it's actually not easy. To be half a second away, most people can do that, but to be the pace or a little bit like to be the quickest takes a bit of time. So I have to do the F1 testing. It's important for my career, but this is also important for the results.
Well, Mark Webber, quickest here, so well placed for the 3000 race.
I think this is a very ruthless category. It does teach the driver how to perform under pressure because we're straight into qualifying, and it's very easy to look quite average in some circuits, you know, because if you don't get your act together in qualifying, you're, you know, all of a sudden you're on the 3rd, 5th row, you know. So what we need is someone to get a good seat and prove that 3000 is worthy, and it will happen, I'm sure. I think there's many guys in this paddock who can do a good job in Formula 1. It just hasn't happened yet.
Webber signing autographs for the fans and enjoying a joke with the team.
And now we're gonna have highlight of qualifying session. I promise you, it was really very, very hot.
Leading the field out for the start of practice, the two Nordic drivers, Tomáš Enge, Justin Wilson, and behind them at Mario Haberfeld, Mark Webber's teammate, and Webber himself coming out between the leaders and the rest of the field. Of course, Tomáš Enge and Justin Wilson with the Nordic cars have been consistently among the fastest all the way through, but Webber definitely trying hard to stay with them. A little moment of worry there as Antônio Pizzonia, the Brazilian rookie, the reigning British Formula 3 champion, came back across the dirt in front of Giorgio Pantano. Pantano a little scare. Tomáš Enge fast early on, 1:35.21 his first fast lap, and he then went quicker again to set a 1:35.08. That was in about 10 minutes of the first 45-minute session, and from then on that time was almost unbeatable. Looking at Ricardo Sperafico, 8th, the Brazilian rookie. And here's another rookie. This is the American driver Derek Hill, who races at the Dams team at Le Mans last weekend. And he's determined to try and make it into Formula 1 and win Le Mans, just like his father before him. Justin Wilson in the pits, championship leader, only 5th, 25 minutes into the first session. And Tomáš Enge showing commitment and getting a huge number of laps in on the track. But he, like everyone else, unable to match his earlier time. Well, later on in the first session, everybody, it seems, coming into the pits for adjustments and to take a fresh set of tyres, as behind Enge, there was a deal of improvement. Antônio Pizzonia crashed at the end of the first session and would cost him 25 minutes of session 2 before the car was fully rebuilt.
Probably we're gonna miss some of the second session, but hopefully we're gonna put the car together in one piece, and maybe we can have another run, and we still have another 2 sets of new tires, and maybe we can improve the time. We're gonna try our best.
Derek Hill, 20th place, finding out that the first corner, the Castrol S, is a very demanding one at the Nurburgring. Doing his best to clean the tyres up as well after that mistake. Enge still in P1, still that time from early on in the first session, 1:35.08, and well, showing still huge signs of commitment as he gets it very sideways in the first corner. Mark Webber only 7th at the end of the first session and seemingly struggling for pace. Darren Manning in a strong 3rd, Justin Wilson in 5th.
Not quick enough. Simple as that. We've got a little bit of work to do. I'm not entirely comfortable with the last part of the lap myself, so I've got to find some time with myself as well. So we'll have a go in the second session, see what I can do.
Father Alan on hand to give his boy some moral support. But worry moments, or a few of them, for Mark Webber, unable to quite match the pace of the front runners, Thomas Enge and Justin Wilson, of course, his direct championship rivals. And Darren Manning hoping that good form at the Nurburgring will put him back on championship challenging course. Of course, this is only round 6 of 12, so still plenty of time for drivers who are outside of the top 3 to make a concerted run for the title. Thomas Enge about to start the second session there, and Justin Wilson, the championship leader, seemingly a little off form. Only 7th, but he did win in Brazil, having started 7th. That's not the sort of picture the team like to see, drivers bouncing all over the curbs.
Oh, it was just a very difficult session. It's so close. I ended up about 2.5 tenths, 3 tenths off pole position, and yet I'm 7th place. So it was a little bit frustrating. A couple of times I went quicker, and I thought I'd move up, and I didn't. I stayed where I was, and then, you know, there's also many occasions where you're on a quicker lap and got caught in traffic because it was very busy out there.
At one stage in the second session, Darren Manning was just 8 1/1000ths off pole in 3rd place, and he ended up in 3rd.
Yeah, I think I'm P6 or something, I don't know. So, yeah, it's in the point, so get a good start and try and make a few places and try and get up on the podium.
So Darren finally ending up squeezed down to 6th position. Sébastien Bourdais improving in the closing stages in 5th. Was racing at Le Mans last year, last weekend rather. The Dams caddy having an engine failure when it was in 4th, finally classified as 13th. Sébastien saying that we've improved the car quite well here. I think that if we'd used new tyres in the first session, we would have done better there as well. We decided to concentrate on the setup, and in the end I think that may have been the best choice because it seemed to work. I don't know exactly how far from pole we are, he says, but it means that we're still a little bit away. Good to be in the top 5 though, he thought. David Saelens on pole here last year. This year doesn't seem quite to have the same pace. He's in 4th spot. So we've been struggling a lot in the last 3 races with a number of problems, but I think we found what the main problem with the car was, and as a result we're back at the front. 4th and 2 tenths away from pole's not bad. Last year it was on pole though, but for the race it's good, I suppose, so I hope to continue this kind of performance. Riccardo Sbarifico in 3rd place. At one stage he was on pole, beating Thomas Enge by 4 1/1000ths. Sbarifico spinning out 10 minutes from the end of the session, not helping his chances, stretching the limits, that's for sure.
The car is quite well when you go to the track, and the first session just learn the track. Yeah, I'm not very happy because I lost the pole in the last 10 minutes, but I think the cars can be pole and more, because in the last new set tires I make a big spin and the tires too flat. So in the last run to improve, I make 5 laps, I think 1/10 slow than pole, but I think for the race the car is very, very good.
He may be an interesting prospect for this race. Mark Webber, 2nd place, just 4 1/1000ths ahead of Sbarifico. He had the pole for about a minute, but Thomas Enge also finally finding the pace to beat his own early lap. Good thing for Webber is that Justin Wilson, the points leader's only 7th.
I wasn't quick enough in the first session, personally myself. You know, we just not good enough, you know, and we had to work hard at. I don't really enjoy the track here. I have a bit of trouble finding the ideal line, and got better in the second session. It was close for pole position, but wasn't quick enough for pole. 600ths or something. Better on the front row, so it's good.
Don't know how far a Formula 3000 car travels in 6 100ths of a second, but there's not a great deal to choose clearly between any of the front men. Thomas Enge once more on pole position, the 2nd of his career.
Oh, I'm very happy. The car was fantastic. The guys did a very good job, and I was able to improve from my first qualifying to the second one.
and that's why I was able to go ahead of everybody and do the pole position.
So tomorrow you start with Mark Webber alongside you, and Justin is only 7th, so the championship is very good.
Well, it looks now quite good, but it's not the end of the race, so we have to do a very good start. I have to do a very good start. I have to make first corner well, and then I try to stay ahead of everybody. I try to win the race, of course, tomorrow.
Simple plan? Yes. So Thomas Enge, second career pole. Last year he was on pole at Hockenheim for the first time, and of course he won that wet-dry race, or very wet-dry race, from his teammate Thomas Scheckter. So, I don't know, perhaps portents of things to come. And in their first race, the two youngsters at Prost, well, Jonathan Cochet in 18th, and Zolt Baumgartner down in 23rd place. Dino Morelli languishing down there in 19th, unable to find the speed around this track. And Justin Wilson, another man perhaps in 7th place who doesn't really enjoy this track. Raced here twice so far, failed to finish either time.
And now, don't move away. We're going to take a short commercial break and rejoin me live on the starting grid just before the race.
Hey, gee, Thomas Enge drinking a bottle of Coca-Cola. What would you think about that? Good product sponsorship placement there by Thomas. Thank you very much to him for introducing us to the programme. We'll be back live in a moment at the Nurburgring. Join me and Gareth Rees. Stay with us. This is the Nurburgring, the venue for round 6 of the FIA Formula 3000 International Championship. Eurosport's coverage continues. Of course, we're now just about the midway stage of the championship, as we have gone through Brazil, Imola, Catalonia and the A1 ring. Now at having done Monaco at the halfway stage of the season, and Justin Wilson is leading the championship. It's his teammate though who's on pole position. Gareth Rees, the record here at the Nürburgring for Justin Wilson isn't good. Started the race in the last 2 years and has failed to finish it, but then we've been in all sorts of trouble with weather, particularly last year, a very wet race. In drier conditions, hopefully that bogey shouldn't rear its ugly head again.
Yeah, I think he's got no concerns over his competitiveness. I mean, although he's qualified 7th, which is disappointing compared to his other performances this year, like he said in the programme previously, he's only 2.5, 3 tenths from pole, so he is competitive, but unfortunately so is sort of 9 or 10 other drivers.
Well, as Mark Webber was saying, you know, just 2 thousandths off the front of the grid is down, you know, off pole position. It is very, very close, as you say, and again, that a factor of the fact that it was quite warm and dry and sunny yesterday. A little warmer, a little drier, and a little sunnier, well, not a little drier, but a little sunnier today. 28 degrees of track temperature at 2 o'clock, and I don't suppose that will be dropping at all. 18, maybe 19 degrees of air temperature. And finally, the crowd's deciding to stay in the grandstands, it looks like, to see the 3000 race, even though there don't appear to be any Schumachers involved. Well, confirmation of the grid. Enge and Webber are 3rd and 2nd in the championship, respectively. Riccardo Sperafico, David Saelens, row 2. Sébastien Bourdais and Darren Manning, row 3. And Darren disappointed to be pushed down to 6, but still very close to the front. Justin Wilson, 7th, ahead of Antônio Pizzonia, the reigning British Formula 3 championship winner, and then Riccardo Maurizio and Giorgio Pantano. Patrick Friesacher, Fabrizio Golin, all the regular midfield runners around there. Rodrigo Sperafico ahead of Mario Haberfeld, and Haberfeld must be starting to feel very disillusioned with this season. He's down in 15th. Webber is comfortably quicker than him pretty much everywhere. Now that's a real case of having to get his head back together and work with the team to try and boost his performance, isn't it?
Yeah, I personally speaking, I can sympathise very closely with him. And I mean, funny enough, the seat he's in is the seat I was in '98. It's the same team, although we were called Dembler Avis then. It's the same group of guys around him, the same engineer, Rob Creswell, who's a top-line engineer. I've never worked with a better guy than that. But basically, it's a crisis of confidence. And once you start to get on a downward spiral of results, you can't seem to do anything to snap out of it. Whatever you do, it just seems impossible. And I fully sympathise, having been there and experienced it. It's very hard to get out of. And he's got the best guys around him to try and help put him out of that. But even so, it still has to come from within him. And it's very difficult.
And is that particularly a factor of this championship where the cars need very confident handling? We were talking about this in previous races. These chassis really, in terms of absolute racing cars, quite loose, and they respond well to a driver who's got the confidence to chuck them about.
Yeah, they respond well to a driver who's prepared to sort of ape it across the curves rather than someone who perhaps goes with a smooth approach. I have to be honest and say I don't know what Mario's type of style is. Mine certainly was a smooth approach and didn't necessarily suit these cars all the time. But like I said, he's got a good group of guys around him, but it has to come within himself, and he's got half a season left to do it. Forget what's happened so far, just get his head down and try and improve the rest of the season.
Well, I think that is the vital point, is that this is only race 6. We've had 5 results already. They haven't been great for him, but he's got 7 more chances, and still, if the points start getting spread up among the fastest 3 runners, he's got a chance, if he can consistently get himself in the points, to be right up the table as well. And so far, we've managed to keep all of our front runners out of trouble, our championship front runners, and I wouldn't like to bet that that will continue all the way through the season as well. So for drivers who are further back in the points positions, there is still very much a chance to improve. The points are, of course, that Justin Wilson leads 31 points to Mark Webber's 20. Thomas Enge is in 3rd place, 2 behind Webber. Then there's a 6-point gap back to Bas Leinders, who's 4th for KTR, on the strength of 2 good second-place performances at Catalonia and the A1 ring. Jamie Malo is 5th, amazingly, for Durango, and Sébastien Bourdais in 6th place in the points. Darren Manning just in 8th place. He was 2nd at Imola, his only point score of the year, and with a top 6 start, he will be hoping to add, well, certainly more points to that. But the question now, of course, as they go around on the warm-up lap, is the first corner. It's traditionally the scene of a mass pile-up, normally in the midfield, but often around the first couple of rows as well. In the Formula 1 press conference after qualifying, Michael Schumacher was being asked if he, having his brother alongside him, worried that history might start repeating itself. They've, of course, had collisions there before, but I mean, really, the drivers just have to be a little bit sensible. It's a very difficult corner to take on the first corner.
Yeah, it's just a case of, it's like threading through the eye of a needle. There is only one line, and one quick line. And everyone obviously wants that one quick line, and all those 24 cars in the one don't go. And there has to be a degree of give and take. You've got to understand that you can't take the ideal line. And unfortunately, when adrenaline's pumping and emotions are running high, you don't always think straight, and that's how accidents happen, unfortunately. And there will be, you can guarantee, at least 3 or 4 cars going through the gravel.
Well, of course, the problem is not when they go into the gravel, but exactly how they come out. Forwards, sideways, backwards, showering gravel around and T-boning other cars. So, yeah, I mean, and again, as so often the drivers say, you know, Monaco, you've got to be on pole if you want to win the race. But really, you know, anywhere where there's a really difficult first corner like that, the further forward you are on the grid, the better your chances of survival to the second corner, which, of course, really does help your ability to win races. Justin Wilson there, like everybody else, squirting on the power through the chicane, just trying to warm the tyres a fraction. No chance really to weave a huge amount of heat into them on this lap. Thomas Enge bringing them round nice and slowly. So Enge with Webber, Sbarafico, Saelens, Bourdais, Manning behind him, and the rest. Czech driver Tomáš Enge on pole position for round 6 of the FIA Formula 3000 Championship. Alongside him, Mark Webber. They start 3rd and 2nd in the championship, respectively. And in 7th place, the championship leader, Justin Wilson, in the 2nd Nordic Racing entry. The full field of 24 cars filing onto the back of the grid. Gabriele Lancieri right at the back, and Tomáš Enge right at the front. The lights will come on, and then we will have to wait and see who makes it through the first corner. The greens are on, the revs rise, the tension mounts, the adrenaline's pumping. Away goes Tomáš Enge, a very good start indeed from him. Justin Wilson not so well away, but trying to thread himself down the middle of the field. Almost disastrous start for Mark Webber. Will hold on to 2nd place, surely. Riccardo Sbarafico goes around the outside, bumping and boring, as Antônio Pizzonia makes a good start and clashes wheels with Sébastien Bourdais. Across the gravel, Jonathan Cochet, I think, in the first of the Frost cars. It's Pizzonia 3rd place behind Webber, but Tomáš Enge, a lightning start. Gareth, very good getaway indeed.
Couldn't have asked for better, could he? There's obviously a question mark over when he might have jumped the start. I mean, if you couldn't see that clearly, but it looked to me like it'd be a very clean, very good start. Mark Webber wasn't so good away either, which helped. And he held the others up behind him. Yeah,
I think Webber's advantage is that nobody else really got the great start that Enge did. If anybody else had been so well hooked up, then they would have out-dragged him quite comprehensively, but he survives by the skin of his teeth. And Enge, well, it's a red car, but I don't suppose it's got Ferrari's traction control system on. Certainly looked as though he was driving away from the line very much better than anyone else. Further back, there's David Saelens defending heavily. Ooh, 3 abreast down on the first lap. It's always going to be tricky stuff. But Enge screaming away. Webber second, Pizzonia third, Bourdais fourth. And then kicking up the dirt again, the second of the European cars, I think, dropping down the order a little. We'll have to sort out the order at the end of the first lap. Oh, and broken nose wing. Is that Dino? No, it's not. I think that is Pantano, the number 6 car, yeah, of Giorgio Pantano. And that will effectively wreck his race. But look at this move on here. I think this is Riccardo Maurizio on the left-hand side, battling with fellow Brazilian Antônio Pizzonia. Pizzonia locks up down the inside. The reigning British Formula 3 champion gets it all wrong on the inside, though, and Maurizio snaps him up. Well, Gareth, he just held on to that one too late, didn't he? Is that Darren Manning trying to come back as well past him?
Nope. Yes.
Well, Manning sits around the outside, Justin Wilson right behind. Pizzonia got a great start. He was behind these 2 guys on the grid, but just defending a fraction late. Manning now trying to hold off Wilson. This is frantic stuff in the first couple of laps. Very good indeed. Well, Manning holds on there. Wilson couldn't go around the outside at that 180-degree Dunlop curve. Now as they start to climb back up the hill, settling down a fraction more.
Yeah, I'm surprised Pizzonia allowed Maurizio to rattle him like that. You know, I mean, somebody of his experience and a proven race winner should have more experience. Just take the inside line. You can brake early because the guy's got to go around the outside, so you're in control, you're in the driving seat. But he allowed Maurizio to rattle him, knocked the brakes up, lost control, slid wide, and Maurizio got past.
Just carried a fraction too much speed into the corner, I thought, and it was all sort of squirreling around underneath him over to the outside, and super smooth in a Formula 3 car. I sort of get the feeling that although he can work with them, he still really doesn't like the way that these cars work particularly well. He seemed to be very much more of the sort of neat, smooth and precise school of Alain Prost motoring rather than anything else.
Yeah, that goes back to what I said before. It does suit drivers who,
Ah, now then, that's
puncture.
Which of the Coloni cars coming in? Let's have a look. I think that's Rodrigo Speraffico, actually. He was battling with Bas Leinders and Fabrizio Golin on the previous lap. We'll have to see. Yeah, there he comes. 19 car is Fabrizio Golin, rather. Golin, who started in 12th place. So Thomas Enge leads then and pulls away from Mark Webber. 3rd place, Riccardo Speraffico. And let's have a look again. Well, this is from the back of the field. Won't show us an awful lot, I don't think. It's really away from the start. Thomas Enge, no, without the lights there in the replay, Gareth, it's very hard to tell exactly how well he got away. If it was a jump start, it was only by hundredths of a second, because it looked like the smoke started wreathing off Webber's tyres at pretty much the same time. Yes, and there is Cochet, deep into the gravel there at the first corner.
Look, Cochet is a good example of how difficult these cars can be as a newcomer. You know, he's obviously a proven driver. He's F3 champion in France, and he's won the Marlboro Masters. He comes here and he qualifies 18th, and he's nowhere near the pace. So it's they are hard cars to get accustomed to.
Well, it's a jump up in horsepower, and it's a very different set of chassis engineering solutions to what he's been used to for the last 2 years in the French Formula 3 Championship. Different set of tyres, different engineers to work with. Yeah, so I mean, obviously delighted to take the opportunity, but to have seen him in the top half dozen really would have been a fairly miraculous job. So
yeah.
Top three. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Martin. I was going to say, as a driver, it's always a difficult situation. Talk of the devil.
Yeah. Well, they're saying that's Baumgartner. I have to say I think that is probably Cochet, but we'll just double check. No, it is. It's Baumgartner. So my entry list is.
I blame you for that.
Base over apex, for want of a better phrase.
What I was saying is, as a driver, when you get that kind of offer, it's a very difficult situation. Yes, you'd like to go and do the drive, but also you have to consider that there's very little test mileage, very little time for you to get used to the new car, and therefore minimal chance of you doing a good job, really. It's very hard to get in one of these cars and stick it on pole, no matter how good you are. So there's always the risk that people look at you and think, well, he's only qualified 18th, he can't be that good. He obviously is a good driver, he has a very good record, but he hasn't done himself justice this weekend. But I think he couldn't afford to turn and drive down because it was with his employers who are Prost Grand Prix, who also own the 3000 team.
It's sort of a no-lose situation because he's already contracted to Prost, so and he's helping them out by standing in for this one weekend. So,
yeah,
you know, it's rather than putting himself in the shooting gallery, I think he's sort of ingratiating himself a little bit with the team by being there when they need him, and you know, that's never a bad thing, is it?
No, it's not. But on the other hand, he is putting himself in front of the shooting gallery, as you said, with other teams perhaps who aren't quite as forgiving and understanding. They don't know he's had no testing or minimal testing. They expect any driver to get in the car who has a proven record like him to do a good job, and he hasn't done a good job. It's not really his fault, but he hasn't. So it does affect his reputation.
They don't know, and quite frankly don't care either. All they'll ever look at is the result sheet.
The statistics, exactly.
And they may not be quite so French either. So Tomáš Enge leading comfortably, fastest lap as you would expect from the man who's at the front of the field and driving away from the others. 2.2 seconds now clear of Mark Webber. Sferifico in third, Ricciardo, David Saelens, Riccardo Maurizio and Antônio Pizzonia make up the top half dozen. So, oh yes, this is the slow Coloni car returning from out of the pits. And, well, Fabrizio Golin doing a good job, I noticed, in the final corner of making sure he's so far off the racing line. He's well away from everyone. Is that Wilson? That is, yes, that is Justin Wilson going deep off there under braking for the Dunlop curve. And that, I'm afraid, is the end of points for the afternoon for him, unless some freakish set of circumstances intervene on his behalf. Well, we didn't see how that started, but I guarantee he was on the outside line, alongside perhaps Darren Manning, trying to take the car around the outside under braking. And, oh dear, Victor Maslov having a bit of a go there. That's an impressive little look down the inside there for him. Having a go at Sébastien Bourdais. He's looking very aggressive there. Good stuff. In fact, it's not Sébastien Bourdais at all, is it? It must have been Derek Hill who was further down the order. So Tomáš Enge, everything going right for him in the Nordic car. Ditto for Mark Webber. As soon as the team getting used to him that Wilson has dropped right down the order, he will look, I think, very differently at the position between himself and Enge, because now it's the choice between trying for 10 or keeping 6, knowing that the championship leader is very unlikely to score anything at all. And early on in the race, that's a very gratifying thing for Webber. All he's got to do now is look ahead. Replay here of Justin Wilson. Well, he wasn't quite close enough as he goes off right on the first apex of the Dunlop curve. Wasn't close enough to actually be making or to be successfully making a passing move on Darren Manning, who is the red and white car ahead of him. And there is Justin Wilson.
Again?
Yes. So, Gareth, you said the way that he rejoined so slowly, he's obviously got a problem, and clearly he has got some kind of fairly major problem.
It indicates a problem, whether it's a slight brake problem or something, I don't know. It's just, but I'm surprised the way he went off, the manner in which he went off, is not in keeping with his normal style, and for some reason he's trying to shed the gravel out the car, I think.
Well, he's continued after his first spin, but I mean, very atypical of Justin Wilson. I can't remember ever having seen him make two mistakes like that in any race from Formula Palmer Audi upwards, and that would suggest that either, yes, he's got a long brake pedal or some grabbing brake problem, or, you know, some other mechanical problem with the car. And I suppose it's always possible that he may have maybe lost a gear away from the start or something like that, but you can never really tell from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, even if you made a mistake going into when he first went off at the hairpin, if you make a mistake there, you tend to lock the brake up and you'll run wide and go around the edge of the corner. To go as far off the circuit as he did indicates that something was more amiss than just a simple error, I think. Unless he missed his braking point by some stupid amount, by making a silly error by looking at the car in front rather than where he was on the track, but I can't imagine that happening.
That's not the sort of driving that's put him in the lead of the championship. No. So down in 22nd place, second from last, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Justin finishing his race in the pits fairly soon. But I think he will probably continue just to see if there is something in the car that he can learn from, or that perhaps is survivable. However, from 22nd place, it's fairly obvious you're not going to work your way back up into 6th in this kind of close competition. So Riccardo Maurizio with Antônio Pizzonia behind him in 6th place, and Darren Manning in 7th. Justin Wilson into the pits then, and that's pretty much an acceptance of the inevitable. We can speculate for the next hour about what's going on, but we will try and find out. Our producer down in the pits hopefully be able to get a message through to us and let us know. Well, that's a major disappointment for Wilson. 3 races now at the Nurburgring and 3 failures to finish. And let's see what happens with the team. Well, they're going for tyres for him, but not actually looking at anything else, which is a little bit of a surprise.
No, maybe there was no problem. Maybe it was just 2 self-induced mistakes. And the tyres obviously changing because he's spun extensively on them twice now, so that's done as a matter of course. They're probably flat spotted like you can't believe. But if he's happy to stay in the car and go out together, it indicates he's just made a mistake rather than has a major problem.
The sort of shades of Monaco 2 years ago, where he did have a problem with the car and had a number of pit stops throughout the race, just kept running almost all the way. Then he was a rookie and desperate to learn everything he could, A, about the cars, B, about Monaco. Now, well...
Yeah, it's a different situation now. Like you said, as a driver, you want as much mileage on Monaco as you can, because you can never test there. It's different with a Nürburgring, and in just a position where he's leading the championship, he's nothing to gain by going back out and just pounding around, really.
And he doesn't really seem to me the sort of driver who will go out and hang around in the hope that he'll accidentally trip up the front runners either.
No.
That would certainly not be in his game plan, I can't imagine, in any year. And certainly not with 7 or 6 races after this still remaining. He'll just have to write this one off to experience. Maybe he will try another couple of laps on new tyres and see if there's something that he can store away in his data banks for further reference. But, well, the jinx of the Nürburgring continues for Justin Wilson, out of the race and in the pits at the moment. But his teammate Thomas Enge still leads. He continues to increase his advantage over Mark Webber. Riccardo Sferafico in 3rd place still. Just 8 laps into the race, but already the order starting to sort itself out and settle down. David Saelens some way back in 4th place. There he is. And in 5th place, Riccardo Maurizio, Antonio Pizzonia, the next yellow and green Petrobras car, Darren Manning in 7th place, Sébastien Bourdais, then Enge Piccini in the European car, and he's in 9th, and Patrick Friesacher is in 10th. And Dino Morelli is currently running in 15th spot, having started 19th on the grid. More after this. Back live at the Nürburgring, 9 laps completed. Thomas Enge leading now by nearly 3 seconds, in fact over 3. 3.3 from Mark Webber as he lays down another fastest race lap. Well, this is round 6 of a 12-race championship. Championship leader Justin Wilson has just headed into the pits a couple of laps ago after an inexplicable trip across the gravel here at the Dunlop curve, the 180-degree plus hairpin bend, if you like, at the end of the track. So the points leader in the pits and out of the race, but his teammates, Thomas Enge, our host here for the Nürburgring race in our pre-race show, is still very much on top form. Mark Webber can't find the pace to touch him at the moment. Webber's gone to 3.3 behind, and there is the rangy figure of Justin Wilson. Well, he's obviously decided that parking it is the only sensible thing to do with that car, other than giving it a swift kick, presumably. And Gareth Rees, Thomas Enge, in much the way that Mark Webber was able to do at Monaco, just driving away from the field.
Yeah, I think he's got it all hooked up really nicely. If you look at the times from both qualifying sessions, he was fastest in both. He's obviously got the car working very nicely. He likes the circuit. And when you get in that sort of groove as a driver, it's wonderful, you know. It doesn't come along that often. When it does, it's just so easy.
Webber 3.3 seconds behind at the end of the last lap, and that gap is just slowly being whittled away down to 3 seconds now. And in 3rd place, Antonio Pizzonia with David Saelens, Riccardo Maurizio and Riccardo Sferafico ahead of Darren Manning and the rest. There is Patrick Friesacher, the Austrian driver, in 10th place in the 2nd Red Bull Junior car, and his teammate Riccardo Maurizio running strongly up in the points. Riccardo sort of fluctuates in form, really. He seems to be back on form again at the moment, but particularly last year in the Red Bull team had a couple of absolute brain fade races where inexplicably he chucked away the car in a perfectly valid point scoring position. Particularly remember at Spain when Enrique Bonaldi was leading and then had a problem. Maurizio took over the lead, and then somehow the two of them contrived to tangle in the closing stages of the race, which was I don't suppose Dr. Helmut Marko, the team boss, would have called it bizarre, but I probably can't use that kind of language, even if I knew it. So Thomas Enge continues to lead. And this is starting to settle down very early on. I think maybe it's about time for it to rain at the Nurburgring. Last year was a real race of involving incident and accident. Don't wish the accidents on anyone, but they are stretching out from each other very much, and certainly not reflecting the kind of close packed grid that we saw in qualifying at all.
That's right, I was just thinking that. It's unfortunate. I was hoping for a good race with them being so close, but they have strung out very, very much.
And it's not as though you can't overtake here either. I mean, there are a couple of decent overtaking opportunities, but...
Yeah, they're not actually as clear-cut as you might think looking at the circuit. There's a couple of half chances. I mean, the hairpin really isn't one. The end of the pit straight is one of the better ones. And into the very tight chicane towards the end of the lap is not a bad one either. Other than that, and neither of those are clear-cut, believe me, and other than that, there's not really an awful lot. So you can sometimes get a processional race. It's a shame Justin's not in the race anymore, because usually he was the man who, if anyone was going to be on the move, he would be.
He is the king of overtaking, isn't it? Well, we've just been watching Darren Manning starting to close up. There you go.
Jinxed him.
Brain fade. Ricardo doesn't lose the place there, but doesn't gain one, so I don't suppose he'll get a penalty for that.
In his defence, actually, that is quite a hard corner to actually judge your braking distance for. There's not many obvious marker points.
However, for the prosecution, after 3 years, I would suggest that he probably ought to know how to use it by now. I think the guy who lost out a little bit more than Ricardo was Antônio Pizzonia, who sort of got checked up a little bit, and he's now got Darren on his tail, as we saw last lap. And, well, Manning is getting inching closer and closer and closer. And, well, he's not probably going to be close enough to show him the nose here, but I should think in the next couple of laps, Darren will be feeling the need to try and force a way past the sixth-place car of Antônio Pizzonia. Ricardo Sperfico, his teammate, is a few spots further up in third place. David Saelens, the Belgian, some way back in fourth. And there is Sperfico, stretching all limits, it says on his back wing. Save the turtles, it says on the back of Antônio Pizzonia's, which is clearly a campaign in the Amazon basin that he has embraced. And Darren Manning chasing that rear wing for all he's worth at the moment. Part of the problem, though, with this passing chance at the end of the front straight is the sort of speed of the final corner. It's not an absolute flat-out corner,
no.
But still, to be able to follow closely through there, you have to really be having a bit of a run-up at it. And that's tough out of that tight chicane behind the pits.
Yeah, that's why I said it's not really a good opportunity. It's a sort of a three-quarter chance as opposed to a half chance, but you have to make sure that you get a good clean run out of the tight chicane beforehand into the last corner. Keep it nice and tidy through the last corner, get a real nice clean exit off the corner to the straight, and hope that the guy in front doesn't get such a good clean exit. Toe up to him and do him under braking, but it is, if the guy in front is driving nice and neatly, it's very difficult.
So you've got to be planning it from where they are on the circuit, really coming out the Dunlop curve and working your way into contention all the way through. The Red Bull Junior team watching onboard cameras, which is obviously something that they have and we don't get in our broadcast. Yeah, you can see them on the top of all the cars, but unfortunately we don't get to see those. Maybe there's some digital feed you can get somewhere and select your camera of choice. Thomas Enge doing nothing wrong so far. Saw him in the early couple of laps sliding the car around a little bit, but no real problems. Jonathan Palmer there in the blue jacket, very much the mentor for Justin Wilson. It was in Jonathan's Formula Palmer Audi Championship that Justin really made his name, winning that category, and as a result, 2 years ago now, getting a fully paid drive in Formula 3000. Jonathan always making sure he was on hand whenever he could to help Justin Wilson along, and still there as well. And of course, Jonathan, for viewers who aren't familiar with his career, raced in British Formula 3, won the championship, won the European Formula 2 championship with the Works Rolt Honda team, and then moved on into Formula 1, where he raced most notably with Tyrrell and won the Jim Clark Cup, which was for normally aspirated cars in the year of outright dominance, or in one of the years of outright dominance by the predominantly turbo engine cars. And then was a McLaren test driver for a couple of years in the McLaren Honda days of Ayrton Senna and of Gerhard Berger. Moved on to become a TV pundit and then running his own executive racing business, and came up with the concept of the Formula Palmer Audi series. so now sort of returns full circle as a mentor for a young driver on his way up the ladder. And you know, when you've got somebody with that kind of experience, we were talking earlier about Mario Haberfeld compared to Mark Webber, not able to find the pace, lacking in confidence, as a result not able to work the car properly enough to find the case. When you've got somebody like that buoying you up, I'm sure that must be a big advantage to a driver when you have these, you know, like this afternoon where it all starts to go pear-shaped.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier on, Mark Webber has his father there, and that's always nice for moral support, to have your family and friends there. But somebody like Jonathan Palmer, who has masses of experience, I mean, he's been through the highs and the lows, and he knows how to handle it, and he could pass that on to someone like Justin, who he's looking after, and someone like Mario Haberfeld could benefit from that.
He needs to find himself an ex-Formula 1 driver with some time on his hands, does our Mario. Round 6 of the FIA Formula 3000 Championship. You're looking at Andrea Piccini versus Patrick Friesacher, and a little Austrian connection because Piccini for many years has been driving for and mentored by Walter Lechner, who is an Austrian team owner and has looked after, I don't mean Walter Lechner, I mean, no, I can't remember his name now. I don't mean Walter Lechner at all, do I? It'll come back to me in a moment, but he has an Austrian team mentor who's been looking through for him, looking out for him through all the junior categories, and of course Austrian driver behind him, Patrick Friesacher, with the largely Austrian-based team as well, RSM Marco. And that mistake by Piccini, Gareth, you said how difficult that is. There's an absolutely copybook version of what you were describing. Now, Friesacher looked a little bit held up there through the final corner, so this is actually going to be bravery on the brakes, I think, that wins this one.
He's gone the wrong side. You've got to be at the inside there to make it count, really. He's actually run by himself. But you can see Piccini made two mistakes. First of all, into the chicane, then out of the chicane. And Friesacher pulled right up and had him ideally placed. But if anything, was too close to the car in front as they came out. It would have been nice to be perhaps another car's length back, get a nice clean exit, get in the slipstream, and then just pull up to him and go past him. But it unfortunately didn't work out for him.
No, he, as you say, I think just a fraction too close. If he'd had a little bit more of a run up through that final car, it did look actually as though he sort of was in danger of running into the back of him and had to get out of the throttle for a couple of fractions of a second, and that was just enough to keep the place away from him. So Piccini hangs on there in 9th place. Of course, they are out of the points, and well, with such a competitive field, there's been a lot of talk about extending point scoring down maybe to the top 10. Here again, look, Piccini, and there Friesacher so close, just couldn't get onto the throttle earlier than Piccini. He was close there, and he did have to wait, didn't he? And that was his undoing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, he would have had to have been over on the left-hand side of the picture, the right-hand side of the road as they came down the straight. And obviously Piccini was in the middle, and Friesacher for a moment there thinking about, I think, going to the right, but deciding there wasn't going to be much mileage in, because no matter how far down towards the pit wall he would have gone, Piccini could have covered that. And so in the end, deciding, all right, I'll try and brave it around on the outside. But, well, avoiding an accident at least, and maybe having another fight, another corner. Bottom of the top 6, there is 5th and 6th positions, and Darren Manning, the red and white car, in 7th place, chasing Antônio Pizzonia and Ricardo Maurizio, the Brazilians. 3 Brazilians in the top 6. That sounds like Formula 1 used to, doesn't it? But the Czech leading from the Australian, so not wildly Formula 1 in the first 2. Tomáš Enge still holding that advantage over Mark Webber. It's extended out to 3.3 seconds after 8 laps, now down to 2.7. Petrobras junior team with both their drivers in the top half dozen, Sberifico and Pizzonia. And of course the Petrobras team also run from Norfolk under the arm or under the wing of David Sears. David really concentrates on the Supernova team. Supernova, Dembla, Arvis, and back to Supernova again. And so that's sort of his setup really, but the whole thing is very much a family business, if you like. Friesacher, after that abortive attempt, shot back 3 or 4 car lengths from Piccini in 9th place and can't seem to make it up again. And again, Darren Manning, having got very close to Antônio Pizzonia a few laps ago, now dropping away a fraction, and possibly Gareth just allowing himself a little bit of respite, and now we've done, what, 17 laps, started to nurture his tyres for maybe the next 5 or 10, keep him in sight, and then start to press on, hopefully, towards the second half of the race.
Yeah, we saw him have a sort of couple of good strong looks at getting past him without any joy, so he's probably sort of sitting there just sort of taking stock, and possibly waiting for a mistake from Pizzonia. We've seen 1 or 2 mistakes from Pizzonia this afternoon, so if you can hassle him into another one, then you can take advantage. But it's the nature of the circuit, really. It is so hard to actually manoeuvre yourself into a position where you can make a clean pass.
And of course the big difference between this championship and where Pizzonia was racing last year in Formula 3 30-minute races, so it's do it now or you don't get a second chance. Here he's going to be racing for the best part of an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes maybe, and so he has got much more defending to do, and for Darren, as the attacker, the aggressor, he's got time. He doesn't have to try and take any half chance that comes along. He can sit there and apply the pressure. And Pizzonia last year in Britain did an awful lot of leading, an awful lot of defending, so that's very much his strong suit. He never really had to come from behind on many occasions, and when he did, well, I think maybe the jury's still out on his overtaking abilities. I mean, certainly he's not short of pace, but very much in Formula Renault and Formula 3 he was able to do a lot of front running, and that's been very much the nature of his racing campaign so far, as he has been in pretty much the quickest car wherever he's been, not just because of the car but also because of his own abilities. But it does mean, unfortunately for Darren, that he's done a lot of holding off other cars in the last 2 or 3 years, and so he's pretty experienced at that. Now, if the positions were reversed, I'd really like to see him actually be on the tail of somebody and being aggressive, and see just what he can, you know, what chances he can make for himself. At the moment, though, it's defence all the way for Pizzonia, hanging on to 1 point in 6th place, and Tomáš Enge romping away out front, leading this race. Eurosport live at the Nurburgring, halfway through the Formula 3000 Championship. Race 6 of 12 being led by Tomáš Enge. And on the last lap, Mark Webber dropping a full second, bar a couple of thousandths, to the race leader. He's now 3.5 from 2.6 seconds back, and as Enge comes across the line this time, actually, if anything, it looks as though Webber's gone a fraction further behind. 4.1, he has another half second, and that is because, not that Mark Webber is going much more slowly than anyone else, he's lapping a fraction quicker than Riccardo Speraffico, but it's Tomáš Enge who has stepped up the pace in the last 2 laps. He's gone 1 second and then half a second quicker, and as they came around that time, Mark Webber will have seen that the gap has gone out considerably. Gareth, when you're a couple of seconds back, can you notice immediately that suddenly the driver ahead is lapping that, you know, margin quicker?
You can usually. You tend to sort of judge it. You obviously have the pit boards. Your pit board shows you the gap between you and the car in front of you and the car behind you. But generally, when you're following a car, you sort of have a marker point. You know exactly where you are on the circuit when the car is turning into a certain corner. So the next lap you come around, you know that he's turned in slightly earlier than before, and he's further ahead of you, or vice versa. So you have a very good idea of, even if it's only 2 or 3 tenths, you know whether the car in front has pulled away or in fact you're pulling him in.
So Enge, having built up his advantage and stabilised it, it looks as though he's given his tyres a good 10 laps of not particularly hard work, and he's now standing on it once more. Again, we've seen over the last 2 seasons Tomáš Enge quite happy to allow the car to wriggle around and squirm and go its own way, and not worried about that. Plus 4.1 it was at the end of the last lap, and you know, from plus 2.6 2 laps ago, that clearly shows to Webber and to Enge as well that Webber has not got the response. It's now up to 4.2.
Yeah.
Last laps 1:32.1 and 1:32.2, so Webber within a tenth of a second, but those first 2 laps doing a second and a half's worth of damage, almost as if Mark was just a little slow to respond there to the gauntlet thrown down to him.
Yeah, I mean, really, I can't... If Mark had the pace there, he's now able to lap. He was lapping mid-32s. He's now done a lap at 32.1, albeit still slower than what Enge's done. But if Mark was able to lap at that pace, he should have been doing it sooner, I think. He should have been hassling Enge, not letting him get away, not letting him get comfortable. But Enge's now comfortably in the lead. and he's in control of the race. And I think if Webber had the pace there, he should have used that pace to get right on Enge's tail and just hassle him.
It's a double-edged sword, really, isn't it? Because not only is the leader comfortable, gets into his rhythm and keeps that advantage, but the danger is, isn't it, that you settle into a rhythm in second place that's just not fast enough to close the gap, and it's comfortable, and you're staying ahead of the guy in third, who you can see more of, maybe even than the guy in front, and you sort of lull yourself into a sense of security.
And it takes suddenly a very quick lap from the leader to snap you out of that and focus your mind and really get on the job. But I mean, to be fair, Mark was honest beforehand, and he did say he doesn't enjoy the circuit very much. He's not completely comfortable with it. And if you like that, it's very hard to really push to the max and go for it. And I think perhaps that's led to him settling into that sort of mid-32 groove, which he's now just snapped out of thanks to Enge putting a couple of quick ones in.
I think German Formula 3 drivers perhaps an advantage here, because this isn't a particularly easy circuit to get to know, is it, the Nurburgring? It's, as you say, a little bit bereft of braking markers, and you could have the same criticism of Silverstone, quite frankly, but perhaps more so here, even though it's not a sort of wide open airfield. There's not an awful lot, you know, other than grass and curbs there to sort of use as markers. Mark admits he doesn't like it. I honestly don't think that from the way he's sort of driven this weekend, Justin Wilson's particularly confident here either, as opposed to disliking it, just not fully, you know, sort of up to speed with it, and that's, you know, a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I think it's one of those circuits that a lot of drivers just don't connect with. I never really liked it. I never disliked it. It was just somewhere you turned up and drove and went home again. It wasn't something you looked forward to, like Spa or the old Ring or Silverstone. It was just a circuit. And if you like that, if you feel a bit ambivalent towards it, then perhaps you're not going to be quite as on the case as you would be if it's something you really get a buzz out of driving around. It's just such an insipid place, you know. It's a horrible place, really. There's nothing to recommend it.
Nobody really tests here either. So I mean, you know, none of the drivers have raced here since this race last year, which was horribly wet all weekend. And the race 99, I can't remember. Was it wet then as well? I don't remember.
Question.
Bruno Junqueira won last year, of course, and made the comment last year when he twice spun in dreadfully wet conditions, once at the little tight chicane behind the pits, and once at the fast run up towards there when there was an accident ahead of him. He went off on the grass, did a huge looping 360-degree spin and came back on, sort of almost confused as to where he was exactly, selected the gear and carried on. You know, won that race there as Andreas Schelt ran out of tyres in the end as the race dried out. Andreas Schelt was leading for ages for Fortec, bizarrely. But, you know, won that race and mentioned then that was the kind of luck that perhaps wins you championships. Well, nobody seems to be having much luck here, but certainly Thomas Enge has got plenty of performance in his car. Mark Webber leading Riccardo Speraffico by 2.5 seconds. Webber's now 4.7 seconds behind the race leader, Thomas Enge. Enge leading 1:32.1 his last lap, Webber's 1:32.5, Speraffico's 1:32.3. So Webber, the slowest of the top three on that lap, and although he's managed to keep the gap constant to the third place man relatively for the last 20 plus laps, it doesn't look really as though he's in any way, Gareth Rees, able to pull away or sort of change the situation. And that deadlock, well, fairly much the case all the way down the order here.
Yeah, as we said before, it's a surprise because the grid was so very close. We thought that the race would be the same, but fortunately, for everyone watching, it's not been the case. But it's a strange approach, or an interesting approach by Enge, that he should be happy to sit doing those mid-32 times for the first third of the race, and all of a sudden, boom, decide, right, I'm going to up the pace now, out of the blue, and suddenly his time's a half a second quicker. I mean, that's a big difference. It's a big difference.
So what about tyre wear and so on? I mean, is there mileage in suggesting that he's sort of keeping it? He's made his little break. He's got his 2.5 seconds. If it comes down, he can respond to it. But if there's no need, keep his tyres alive in case there's something dramatic happening, and in the end he might need them. Which is what doesn't fit with what he's done, because he already had that break. He didn't need to now nail it again and unnecessarily use his tyres. You know, he could have just... He obviously had Webber at arm's length and was comfortable doing so without leaning on the car too heavily. So I didn't really understand the need to suddenly blitz it and pull away another one. It basically almost doubled his lead. Well, maybe he's just feeling, you know, he said that the car was very well set up, Mark, saying that they couldn't really, you know, get the car to his handling preferences, and he wasn't quite happy with it. Maybe Tomáš has just got, you know, one of those weekends, as you said earlier, where everything is working so well, and if you like, he almost can't stop himself driving the car as quickly as it wants to go.
Yeah, but I can understand what you're saying, but if that was me, having experienced both types of scenario where the car is so fantastic you can do it with your eyes closed, you just blitz it from the word go, you know, and really, even though you use the tyres up, it doesn't matter, you know, because the car's going so well and you're in such a good frame of mind, it really doesn't matter how hard, how early you go, you get away with it. So I just, well, in his situation, I think it's always best to try and sort of win a race in the slowest possible time, you know, you just ease on the car, ease on yourself, and it's just nice and simple. He did that for the first third of the race, I think, and all of a sudden thought, no, I'm bored of this, I'm gonna nail it.
I wonder if that was the problem then, maybe.
Yeah, it could be. Sometimes you do get into a sort of a state of mind where you're not being challenged, your mind isn't being kept sharp because you're just in such a groove, and maybe up the pace just to keep himself sharp. We could speculate all day, Martin, couldn't we?
We could. Well, he's been listening, obviously, because he's now backed off a little bit. His last lap, 1:32.4. And identical time almost to the 1,000th by Riccardo Sbarafico, but Webber just a fraction quicker, 1:32.3, so still, well, I'm sure still trying to chase down the race leader, but more importantly staying ahead of Sbarafico and out of his clutches, because the last thing that Webber really needs now is to be caught by Sbarafico and subject to some ambitious lunging from a rookie driver.
Yeah, I have to say that'll be the biggest thing in his mind now, will be the car behind him, as opposed to trying to reel in Enge. I think Enge now is so far ahead. I mean, 4 seconds doesn't sound an awful lot, but believe me, when you sat in a racing car, that looks a long way ahead. And the fact that the car behind is so close, that will be focusing his mind.
The other thing, of course, that will be going through his mind, and he will have played out many times, is the scenario with regard to points. Webber's on 20, Enge on 18 in second place in the championship. Justin Wilson on 31 will not score, we know that now. He's packed up and left the car to its own devices. So Webber potentially can move on to 26, and Enge potentially now, if they stay as they are, will move on to 28. So Webber will lose second place in the championship, but by only 2 points. He'll be within 5 of the lead, though, and so it's still an aggregate gain on the championship leader. And so once more, you know, if he feels that Enge has got away from him and he's not coming back, then all focus will be on staying out of trouble.
Yeah, quite right. I mean, he just had to focus on getting points this early in the season, because it still is early in the season, really. You know, if this was sort of 2 races to go or something, he'd have to get his head down and go after him, but at the moment, just keep racking the points up.
Well, Wilson, the championship leader with 30 points, 60 still on offer after this, 70 at the moment, so yeah, anything could still happen. Dino Morelli watching the mirrors as Mario Haberfeld gets closer and closer, and Dino in 15th place, rocketing over the curbs there. I was about to mention earlier, there's been talk about various forms of racing extending the points down to maybe 10th place as opposed to a fairly restrictive top 6 at the moment. Gareth, do you think there's any mileage in that?
I really don't think. I think it's nice for, if you can go back to your sponsors and say, I got points at the weekend, you finished 10th and got points, but other than that, I can't see any benefit, really.
It would mean in Formula 3000 that nearly half the field would be eligible for points in a decent race, so maybe not then. Leading at the Nurburgring, Tomáš Enge, the Czech in the Nordic Coca-Cola Racing entry, by 4.6 seconds from Mark Webber. This is the battle for 9th and 10th place. Andrea Piccini, the Italian driver, still holding off Patrick Friesacher, and still absolutely can't. Gerhard Welter, that's the name of his Austrian mentor. I'm getting Welter and Walter Lechner mixed up. That was the name I was trying to remember earlier, for those of you that haven't nodded off yet as my machinations. So Enge, Webber, Riccardo Sbarafico in 3rd, now 3.5 seconds behind Webber. 4th place, David Saelens, and it's 5th, 6th and 7th where we might possibly still get a change in the last half dozen laps. Darren Manning in 7th, chasing Antônio Pizzonia. Gareth Rees alongside me. Gareth, Darren's had, well, a half stab at Antônio, but really there haven't been many overtaking opportunities anywhere in the race. Maybe Mario Haberfeld's now going to prove us wrong as he has a go at Dino Morelli.
Yeah, it is frustrating to be in Darren's position there, where he does appear to be quicker than Pizzonia, but only by a small amount, and certainly not enough to sort of present a sustained challenge and actually get by the car in front. So he's got to be satisfied, unfortunately, unless he Pizzonia makes a mistake or someone else further up the field falls off. He's going to have to sort of be satisfied with what he's got, unfortunately, which is a shame because he deserves to. He's in 7th place now, Manning, at the moment. Yeah, he deserves to be in the points.
Well, it's a shame. I mean, Pizzonia really is the only man who's sort of made much of a difference to the front end of the grid, apart from Justin Wilson, who dropped out. But Pizzonia started in 8th place and rocketed up to 5th at the start. Victor Maslow, not Darren Manning. Yes, that long shot a little hard to identify because Darren and Victor's helmets aren't actually that dissimilar with the sort of red, white and bluey effect on them. So that was almost the curse of the commentators there, but not quite. Victor's a long way down the order, and when our timing screen refreshes itself, I'll be able to tell you why. Here he is, and this is that Vidal chicane, just coming in a fraction hot and late on the brakes as he turns. Cars don't like turning and braking and steering at the same time. So there you go. Darren Manning still running in 7th place. Incidentally, previous winners of this race we touched on earlier. Bruno Junqueira winning last year. Jason Watt won the year before. Gonzalo Rodriguez, the winner in 98, Ricardo Zonta in 97, Kenny Bratt, the IndyCar racer in 96, Olivier Panis, 93, he won here in Formula 1, of course, and Luca Badua, the 92 winner of this race, being in and out of Formula 1. So in terms of success for these, for winners of the races here, well, Bruno Junqueira still racing with the Target Ganassi racing team. Nicola Minassi, his championship rival last year, though, Gareth, has just been dropped by Ganassi in favour of Mimo Gidley, who is turning into the Roberto Moreno of his generation in IndyCars. Seems, although they both showed pretty much the same sort of pace in 3000s, you know, Nicola had a winning streak, then Bruno had a winning streak mid-season, and they both kind of swapped lead of the championship. It seems though they've got into a completely different car type, and it suits Bruno and doesn't suit Nicola at all, it would seem.
Yeah, I think, I mean, personally speaking, in my opinion, Junqueira was the more talented of the two anyway, and I think he would find it easier to make the jump from one car to a different type of car, as he's proven. He took a few races to settle into IndyCar, and now he's quick. Haberfeld getting close to Dino Morelli.
He is getting very close to Dino Morelli, isn't he? That was a very good run out of the Dunlop corner, and sitting around the outside. Well, Dino's not going to wave him through by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, of course, there runs out wide there, and I'm sure Mario knew that was coming. Dino wasn't going to hold a tight line to allow him to go through.
Dino's been ran too long for that to come off, I'm afraid.
And that's, I mean, that's reasonably fair racing. I mean, that's not
absolutely.
gamesmanship.
No,
he needs that racing line, and he's darn well going to take it.
No, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah, Manassian, on the other hand, like I said, in my opinion, is less a driver and has struggled. I mean, he has done nothing really since he's been in IndyCar. He's in probably one of the top seats out there, and really you have to go out and perform. So there's an element of pressure, and unfortunately he's not responded.
Well, this is going to be a quick old race. Last year, of course, with all sorts of rain and accidents and tyre changes and everything, very different to this year. Have a look again. Out of the Dunlop curve, the hairpin. Well, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now then, let's see a replay of that, because I have a feeling that Dino may perhaps have got it all wrong out of that little tight chicane at the back of the pits, and put himself in a position where Haberfeld was trying to make a move. And Haberfeld pulling off as well, broken left, so he was coming down the inside. Yes, he was. Look at this. Little flash of sparks as wheel rim makes contact with wheel rim. That was 50-50, I would have said.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's fair to say. Haberfeld stuck his nose in where perhaps he should have thought twice, and Dino gave him no room. So, a bit of each, I think.
Well, good to see somebody actually trying to make an overtaking manoeuvre here, though. So, and you know, they raced wheel to wheel for a third of the lap on the way up there without any problems, and so, well, just I don't know. Dino right up there by the apex.
Oh, it's a shame for Dino. He deserves a break. You know, he's had a fair portion of bad luck over the last few years.
He certainly has. 2 laps to go then, as Thomas Enge comes up the hill from the Dunlop curve. And Enge's been absolutely uncatchable here. Now 6.5 seconds ahead of Webber. Whatever setup, and Webber trailing the brakes all the way down in there. And look behind him as well, Speraffico. Is it that these guys are running out of tyres compared to Enge? I mean, there were big lockups from both of them. All right, 2 laps to go, but it's not like they're in a position to actually take advantage of any late braking.
No, but if you've done it earlier in the race and you have a flat spot that it's there already, it might lead to another problem like that.
Thomas Enge leads 6.4 ahead of Mark Webber, and Webber safely away from the third place man. David Saelens leading this group into shot ahead of Riccardo Maurizio, Antonio Pizzonia, Darren Manning and Sébastien Bourdais. So Bourdais closing up into the tail of that group. He started in 5th place in the Dams car, and well, he dropped down earlier on and was sort of fighting off drivers further back for 9th and 10th places. But well, he's got up onto Darren Manning's tail. Darren unable, it seems, to make any impression on Antonio Pizzonia for that last point. And these are the 2 guys that Bourdais was battling earlier on, Angelo Piccini and Patrick Friesacher. So he's found some pace in the middle stint of the race, Bourdais, and driven away from them and closed up on the lead group. But Saelens there in 4th place as they go on to the final lap. He seems to be pretty much set, and the only man who can make much of a difference really to these points, I think, is going to be Darren Manning, and it'll have to be a last lap lunge, and I'm not actually sure that he was close enough to do it. Thomas Enge then, comfortably out front, and he should motor on serenely to the checkered flag at the end of this lap, having done everything right. Fastest in the first session, saw his pole time eclipsed by 2 other drivers, and then went out and laid on another fast lap to take it back in the dying moments of the session. Mark Webber from 2nd on the grid, 2nd. Riccardo Speraffico from 3rd on the grid, 3rd. David Saelens from 4th on the grid, 4th. And Derek Mower there, with his son Chris just obscured. The Coca-Cola Nordic Racing team bosses will be very happy with this weekend, certainly on behalf of Thomas. Pole and a win. Disappointing for Justin Wilson, the points leader, only 7th place, and fails to finish with an unspecified problem. But for Nordic, it's another victory and a win. Doing a Justin Wilson there from Brazil, but without T-boning the pit wall there. Thomas Enge doing a stoppie over the line as he wins at the Nurburgring. And Darren Manning going for it on the final corner, but the line is much too close really to have a drag race out unless you're alongside, as Haberfeld was earlier on. So Darren misses out on that final point as he finishes in 7th place. And really, from the moment he lit up the tyres at the start, Enge was absolutely uncatchable, Gareth.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the times, like I said in qualifying, that was always fairly predictable. He looked just to have a little bit in hand of everybody else, and he certainly did that in the race.
So 50 minutes of racing here, nearly 51. So not quite double the length of a British Formula 3 race, but still shorter races this year. There's Derek Mower, and he is looking suitably happy, isn't he? Well, the German TV crews will go and have a chat to him. And Thomas Enge, well, now moves to 2nd place in the championship. Win number 2 of the season for him, as he won in Barcelona. 2 wins for Justin Wilson as well, at Interlagos, the first race, and at the A1 ring. And Thomas Enge with 2 third places to Justin Wilson's 2nd place at Monaco, 3rd place in Catalonia, and he had a point also at Imola, but no points here for him. There is Justin. Well, this will be another Nurburgring weekend that he'll happily forget, I should think. Still leads the points. Here's the final results then, and well, we did speculate early on that Thomas Enge was so fast away, perhaps he was just a touch ambitious in the Clay Regazzoni manner, but not at all. Seems to have just hooked up the car much better than front row starter Webber. So points down to Pizzonia, Darren Manning just outside. We saw Piccini and Friesacher, of course, battling a little bit earlier on for 9th and 10th places, and then behind them the battle for 15th all went a little bit pear-shaped for Dino Morelli as he tangled with Mario Haberfeld. Baz Leinders 11th from Rodrigo Speraffico and Jamie Malo. Then Gabriele Lancieri, Derek Hill taking 15th place in the end, ahead of Jonathan Cochet in the Prost car for his first drive, and Sol Baumgartner, the Hungarian, in 19th place in his first drive for Prost, hoping to combine the Formula 3000 races with his German Formula 3 championship campaign. So Dino Morelli, Mario Haberfeld, both retiring 4 laps from the end, and Justin Wilson a long way further back than that as he retired early on in the race. Thomas Enge leads them round to Parc Fermé as we see the replay here of him taking the checkered flag and producing a big lock-up on the brakes. Congratulations from the Coca-Cola Nordic Racing team for him as he takes his 2nd win of the season, 3rd of his career. So that's 2 wins in Germany now for Thomas Enge, and I guess that's a pretty big market for his backers. The Coca-Cola organisation taking up the Nordic Racing team. They were part sponsors last year, now title sponsors of Nordic Racing, and I don't think, Gareth, that either Nordic Racing or Coca-Cola could have imagined they were going to have the season that they're having at the moment.
No, nobody could. I think they've done a fantastic job. I mean, the team, the drivers, done a wonderful job. Just goes to show with a bit of finance what a team who previously have been sort of midfield runners can do.
Congratulations there from Riccardo Maurizio, and prior to that from Mark Webber for our race winner, Thomas Enge. In the back of the shot, the pale blue helmet, David Saelens, who has come in 4th place, of course, here. And the other 2 cars in the top half dozen, the point scorers, Riccardo Maurizio, 5th, of course, we've seen, and Antônio Pizzonia in 6th place. And it was Ricardo Sperafico, the other Brazilian, who will take the other podium step. But Enge, well, really in a class of his own here, and very much on top in qualifying, could respond, spent an awful lot of track time running around in qualifying, trying to finalise his setup and sort the car out, and then when he needed to at the end of the 2nd session, went out and blitzed another qualifying lap to take back pole. Lit up the tyres superbly, really hooked the car up away from the start into the 1st corner, and had nearly a second ahead of the field by the time they got out at the Dunlop curve for the first time. Mark Webber fighting a rearguard action on that 1st lap to hold on to his 2nd position. That was pretty much the story of the race. Enge able to drive away at will, and Webber with 2nd place and just concentrating really on making sure that he kept it. And the championship points, Wilson 31, Enge 28, Webber 26 as predicted. Bas Leinders doesn't score here but holds on to 4th place in the championship as Jamie Malo and David Saelens are tied on points with Antonio Pizzonia. Sébastien Bourdais on 7, Darren Manning still with 6, didn't manage to add to that here, still 6 more races to go, so he could well find himself up into the top 3 in the championship if he can really string some good results together. And 17 point-scoring drivers so far this year. So again, with this closeness of the Formula 3000 field, Gareth, a few drivers able to get into the lower reaches, but the top 2 or 3 drivers are pretty much the same guys all the time. And most of those in red and white cars.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's generally the way. I mean, although 3000's closed up since the new regulations came in 96, wasn't it? Really, it's still the same drivers. It's always good drivers to get to the front in the end. It's just that they're not quite as far ahead as they were because the cars are all identical now, fairly identical. Whereas before it was a much freer formula.
Well, the whole point of Formula 3000 is to try and prove that talent will out by giving them identical machinery. Of course, some cars more equal than others, as always, and the driver having to have a fair amount to do with that as well in Formula 3000, which again is at least partly good training for moving up into other categories. Well, a number of Formula 3000 former winners are currently in Formula 1. Can't remember the last time one went directly in. Even Nick Heidfeld didn't go directly in as the champion, so it's a sort of circuitous route. You've got to find yourself a sports car driver, an IndyCar drive, or a long-term Williams contract or something or other to get yourself in. So the Czech national anthem rings out for Thomas Enge, the winner of our race here. Beautiful piece of music, the national anthem of the Czech Republic for Tomáš Enge, winner of race 6. Second time that anthem has been played on the podium this year. Twice we've had Advance Australia Fair, twice we've had God Save the Queen. 3 men have won all 6 races this year. This is 2 now for Tomáš Enge to bring him level on wins with the man who was second there on the left-hand side, Mark Webber, and Justin Wilson, Enge's teammate, who retired early on in the race, also twice a winner. And the difference between them in points, well, Wilson has had a better point-scoring record. This is his first non-point scoring finish of the year, or non-finish of the year. Webber has scored points just twice before now, and they were both for victory. And there on the right-hand side of the picture, young Riccardo Sperafico, one of a pair of brothers racing up through the junior order and into Formula 3000. Rodrigo finishing down the order, but Riccardo on the podium. So that's it from the Nurburgring, from Gareth Rees and myself. Next weekend it will be the home of the French Grand Prix Magny-Cours that plays host. You'll be able to pick up all the action with Carlton Kirby and Jamie Davis. Until then, from us here at Eurosport, it's goodbye.